To follow up on Greymon OTK, you bet your buns I'll be charging into the second deck profile looking at Garurumon deck profiles. There are a lot of fun interesting card interactions that weregarurumon Sagittarius Mode introduces, but above all, if Greymon can OTK, theoretically, Garurumon the OG should be able to too. And remember, if you're looking for some merch, I have a store now featuring one of my local artists. Here you can find your needs, whether it be sleeves for your deck, or even a brand spanking new playmat. I have a lot of fun exciting ones coming in the pipeline, and hope they do not disappoint. The narrative of today's video will follow a similar structure to my last video, focusing first on cards that can be used with Garurumon decks, before pivoting into some new contenders to the deck, combos, and then of course, the overall deck profile. With EX9 vs Monsters, there is a brand new Garurumon line that's introduced, down to even the Sunomon. However, the main line for this is going to go towards the Gabumon, Garurumon, and weregarurumon Sagittarius Mode cards. With Gabumon, what's important about this Digimon isn't its on-play effect that can find itself in Garurumon, but rather the jamming inheritable. When it comes to battling security in the current meta, nothing ruins your day more than seeing your opponent flip King Drassel turn 1, and then you realize your opponent statistically will have a Digimon with at minimum 12,000 DP. Likewise, Garurumon has the same inheritable, but there have been very niche scenarios in which its training ability has come in handy. After all, who doesn't want to not suspend in the face of Hexablaumon in a Galaxy Dex? But the real MVP for this Garurumon deck is now going to hinge on weregarurumon Sagittarius Mode, because this Digimon mirrors many abilities of the Metalgreymon Alterous Mode that I covered in my last deck profile video. If you haven't checked that video out, you can find it in this video's description. Weregarurumon Sagittarius Mode has a when digivolving and on-play effect that lets you stun one of your opponent's Digimon or Tamers from suspending. Meaning if you wanted to circumvent blocker, here it is, because they can't suspend. Your opponent would need a card effect that redirects the attack via inheritable, but there are some cards that still require them to be suspended. The Your Turn effect, however, looks for a Digimon being played, or digivolved into that has Greymon in its name, or a Tamer with Mat Ishida in its name is played, in order to digivolve into a level 6 Garurumon Digimon for free. Remember that EX1 Greymon that we had paired with Metalgreymon Alterous Mode? Likewise, there's an equivalent for Garurumon as well. EX1 Garurumon allows you to, when attacking, once per turn play one Mat Ishida with a play cost of 3 or less from your hand without paying the cost. This means you can free Evo into a level 6 on the attack, and assuming you have jamming in the sources, it's a relatively safe check excluding Blast Digivolution. This is why this Digimon is super very good, for the fact that there are a ton of Garurumon options in which you can use with this deck. While there are your run-of-the-mill options with Metalgarurumon, Metalgarurumon X, and Garurumon, the one option I did not cover in my discussion video is magnagarurumon. This promo card was available as a tournament event card a few months ago, and while it does cost 4 to digivolve into, the Sagittarius Mode makes it free. Other than Armor Purge, this Digimon has a when digivolving effect in which you return one of your opponent's level 3, 4, and 5 Digimon to the hand. Afraid of Blast Evos into 6? Remove it before it happens. Afraid of the Blast Evo to level 5? Same thing. But the biggest element of this card is in the form of its end of attack trigger. Because end of attack, by placing this Digimon's top stacked card as the top security card, this Digimon or Tamer unsuspends. While true the EX1 Garurumon is only once per turn when you attack, the weregarurumon Sagittarius Mode's Your Turn effect is not. So ultimately, the game plan follows a very similar pattern to the Greymon OTK deck, and then clear out 3 to 4 attacks per game on a single turn. There isn't a great Gabumon searcher equivalent like Agumon, which is why ultimately at this time, you're leaning more on some of your Tamers to do the heavy lifting. With Mat Ishida, this means that you can add any of your Digimon to the hand, but you're also supported by the old BT6 Mat who can draw you a card and gain you a memory when you promote up a Digimon with Gabumon or Garurumon in its name. Frankly, building in the back makes me think of a raised meta, but with the amount of Tamers you run, it also feels like a combination of Ulforce Vidramon and Blue Hybrid. Because as you build the perfect stack, you'll be sequencing various events to be more optimal. You might favor memory, or if you're lucky, you might hit the one of for extra aggro. But whether you promote out weregarurumon at 1 memory or the Sagittarius Mode itself, this is where the whole combo can truly begin. Because of how you can sequence your effects, you can play with the memory quite well. Personally, I actually really like the EX1 weregarurumon because of its inheritable gain of memory. Because of this, when weregarurumon Sagittarius Mode attacks, assuming you sequence the effects to play Mat Ishida first, you can look for a level 6 Garurumon Digimon before activating the effect of your Digimon that draws a card. Doing so means that you can gain another memory here for free. And assuming you go into magnagarurumon, this means that if you have that inheritable jamming in the sources, magnagarurumon gets into the security for free. And remember, it can't be blocked probably because of the weregarurumon Sagittarius Mode stunning effect. Meaning at the end of attack, assuming a big security bomb or blasted evolution isn't hit, magnagarurumon will send itself to the top of your security and then unsuspend your weregarurumon Sagittarius Mode. Meaning you can somehow play another mat and retain turn, you can do this all over again. Moving to the deck profile, this is my current take after a lot of extensive testing. And while you might argue that it conflicts with my explanation of Greymon OTK, Garurumon decks unfortunately don't have an easy way to do multiple security checks. For the level 2s, there are two options that I primarily explored. The first being the BT15 Tsunamon, which can potentially provide an extra DP buff through your opponent's turn when a card is added to your hand on your turn. While this would be my preferential egg, unfortunately there is one egg that pulls ahead of it, and that's the BT11 Wanyamon. This Wanyamon has the ability to draw a card if you have a blue tamer in play. And considering this deck has many blue tamer options, you'll almost always trigger this card even with a simple raise and Gabumon in the back to a tamer out in play. For your level 3s, like the Agumons, it's almost entirely all Gabumon. I say almost entirely because the one copy of Gabumon X is still a great form of battle protection in the case you don't have other inheritables. Gabumon X is an amazing Digimon that can search for almost every Digimon in the deck. Not to mention, the battle protection is pretty nice since it effectively keeps your opponent from attacking over your Digimon. But ultimately for your regular old Gabumons, the BT15 variant assists with so much draw power and memory tricks in combination with Matt Ishida. Similar to the Greymon OTK variant, this deck utilizes only 2 copies of Gabumon from EX9, even though this specific variant is on the Gabumon Bond of Friendship Ace. But the reasoning for this is coming up shortly. Because this Digimon like EX1 Agumon can also find tamers, this is a potent combo with its Garurumon counterpart. But the last Gabumon for this lineup is going to maximize the Gabumon from EX9 because of that jamming inheritable. Yes, it does feel bad sometimes to play out said Digimon, but there are some valid targets to find. For Garurumons, yes, you're also utilizing the one copy of Garurumon X. This beast of an X-antibody Digimon provides that same battle protection, but can also gain you a memory if you have a Garurumon in the sources when you Digivolve into it. Did I mention this Digimon also gets to filter 2 cards and then trash 2? The remaining Garurumons are the 4 copies of the EX1 variant that can play your Matt Ishidas for free. The best part, playing out the BT15 Matt Ishida and high rolling into a level 6 Digimon if you don't have one in play when you attack into Sagittarius Mode. But of course, the last 2 variants are the ones that draw you additional cards and play your Matt Ishidas. And of course, the second DM variant card, the Garurumon, that has the same jamming inheritable. However, one quick side note for this card is that because of its training ability, you could be tucking additional sources in the safety of the raise and utilizing them for another card in the future. Level 5 wise, it's no surprise I'm running the one copy of the promo weregarurumon because this Digimon combined with jamming or battle protection is nasty. Because you run all Digimon with Garurumon, except for the Garurumon X, this Digimon can unsuspend when it attacks. Meaning if your opponent doesn't have a threat, doing this with jamming is exceptionally nasty, since you have a choice as the player when you trigger the EX1 Garurumon's effect. Because then after the first unsuspend, you could be going into weregarurumon Sagittarius Mode to free Evo into level 6, and unsuspend again. No surprise I'm also on the 4 copies of weregarurumon Sagittarius Mode, because this card is beastly. But for the last 3 slots, I went with the EX1 weregarurumon because of its memory gain. Memory gains can be very important, especially when playing out tamers to attack again. However, if you're wanting to try the additional security attack +1 in this tribal variant, the only other Garurumon that offers an extra security check is the one from the starter deck, and it's a little antiquated. For the level 6s, 4 promo magnagarurumons are really great for this deck, but for the secondary I keep it simple as BT15 Metalgarurumon. No Metalgarurumon X because in order to utilize its effect fully, either X antibody or making sure you're at Metalgarurumon is important. Of course for the level 7s you could go with Omnimon X to finish the game, but with so many memory gain opportunities and also unsuspends, Gabumon Bond of Friendship Ace just felt so appropriate. Option wise it's fairly simple with 1 Hammer Spark for memory gains, 2 memory boosts for consistency and delayed memory, and 2 blue scrambles for exceptionally dirty effects. Blue Scramble is hilarious in that not only do you get a cheat into your level 5s for a cost of 1, but it's the fact that you could be placing Magnagarurumons on top of the security, then when they're battled, you can bring them back to your hand and put them back there again. Who wants to run into a 12,000 DP Digimon in security? Initial testing had me using Wisteria Memory Boost because the filter is 3 cards versus 4, but overall, that's a toss-up on preference. Finally, for Tamers, I'm on a lot of Matt Ishidas, because again, the same rule. It must be explicitly Matt Ishida. 4 Matt Ishidas from BT15 who can find every Digimon including the Bond of Friendship Ace, 3 BT6 Matt Ishidas for additional draws, and this tamer does allow you to cheat into the Bond of Friendship Ace in a pinch, and 1 copy of the starter deck Matt that can gain a memory if your opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution sources. I kinda do want to add a second copy of this card, but the memory gain rarely goes off. It's just a cheap tamer to play. Though I suppose you could run the purple starter deck or the memory fixer Matt from the starter deck as other options. One reason why I didn't care too much for this variant is because you don't discard much, and because there is no blitz target for Garurumon, it makes it less desirable. Largely, again, like Greymon, I'm not saying Garurumon OTK is perfect. But when it comes to learning new interactions and providing defensive and offensive options, it's a mix and match of aggro and control. What are your thoughts on this deck profile? And again, what would you change? Because this week's content looks at maybe 2 more uploads before we play this game all over again next week. This is DIGI-PANDA, logging out.